I'm Rochelle Courtenay, and I'm super excited to bring you another bloody podcast. Welcome to another episode of Another Bloody Podcast. Today I'm going to talk to you about the bloody big survey. There's a lot of bloodies in there, isn't there? We will be sharing with you some of the harrowing stories and some of the really alarming statistics that we found through the survey. I'm going to let you know what I'm after and how you can help. As a teenager, I needed 2 tampons, but could not afford a packet of tampons until the next day. I opened a box in a shop and took out 2. I hid the tampon box at the back of the shelf. I returned to the shop the next day and purchased the open packet. I was terrified I would be caught shoplifting and to be sent to prison. I have felt extremely guilty about that action ever since. I genuinely did not know what else I could do at that time. For much of my pre-teen to young adult life, I never had access to consistent period products due to cost. I would have to decide between eating or buying a packet of pads. These experiences were worse when experiencing homelessness and foster care, where no products were available or offered. I had to struggle in silence, and I dream of a world where period products are as accessible as toilet paper. So do I. In 2024, we brought about the bloody big survey. We had over 153,000 responses. The statistics were alarming. More than 64% of the respondents found it difficult to afford period products. Could you imagine a world where 64% of Australians are unable to do something because of their period? And we also found that those statistics raised for those who were Indigenous, living with a disability, or gender diverse. When we know better, we can do better. In 2019, we were working with QUT, and what we asked for them was to help us to research whether girls were staying in school because we had put vending machines into schools. We wanted to measure the impact of access to period products in schools. We really struggled to get the data that we wanted because we had to work with ethics. We had to work with children under the age of 16 to get the data collection that we needed. And it was then that I thought, you know what? I'm just going to go out to the Australian public and ask them about their experiences with menstruation. And so we did. In 2021, we had 125,000 respondents. And I always sometimes feel like the Stephen Bradbury of charities because we just stumbled along the line. A lot of the questions that we put in there were based on some of the research questions that we had worked with the QUT on. In doing that body of research in 2021, we were able to advocate for change. So I believe strongly, and so do a lot of other people, that no girl should ever miss out on a day of education because their family can't afford period products, which was why we were so passionate about putting the vending machines and period products into schools. When we come about the 2024 Bloody Big Survey, we had advocated so well that in most states and territories, they were providing period products to all high schools in Australia. Every state and territory was different. And in Queensland, we have seen the rollout of our Dignity vending machines in every primary and high school in Queensland, along with an education program to help ensure that we could help remove the shame and stigma. So when we got to the 2024 survey, we looked at the 2021 survey and thought, what were some of the questions that we really wanted to know a little bit different on? So we wanted to capture people's postcodes, and we wanted to capture their postcodes because the last survey we just asked what state they were from. And I will give you an example. In Queensland, in Stafford, I bet you the rate of period poverty is very different to Weipa, Mount Isa, or the very top of Queensland. So we wanted to capture what that looked like. And we also wanted to work with each council in each state to measure what menstrual equity looks like in 2024 and to work with each council to ensure that by the time we got to 2027, that problem did no longer exist. And that's a fairly easy fix. It's about provision of period products, it's about education, and it's about how do they help remove the shame and stigma, because I truly believe that together we're stronger. One of the other really important questions that we added was about what is your household income? And I know that we got some pushback from those that were answering that, but I wanted to explain why we needed to ask that. I had anecdotally been hearing stories of people who were earning over 100,000 and up into the 200,000 and knew that they were experiencing period poverty, like a woman who came up to me and explained how she was cutting a pad in half because her husband had lost his job, their mortgage had gone up, her childcare fees had gone up, and everything in her household was costing her too much. And period products, as she said, were a luxury, and that she would rather put food on the table for her kids. So what I found alarming in the Bloody Big survey results were that people who were earning over $100,000 in household income were exhibiting period poverty. And when I think about why I started the charity because I wanted to make sure that people who were experiencing homelessness and fleeing domestic violence or were living below the poverty line would have access to period products. But these statistics show us that people who have jobs, people who are living one paycheck to another, but have good household income are living below the poverty line. When mortgages keep going up, when it cost me $120 to fuel my car yesterday, when the cost of childcare and school fees and sport and food and fuel and all of the electricity and all of those things come into your household, it is women who are taking the hit on their health and having to go without the very basic of essentials. And they're the statistics that we wanted to show. And I want to explain why we wanted to get that. We want from this Bloody Big survey for every workplace to provide period products. I've seen workplaces providing breakfast, lunch and dinners. I've seen ping pong tables and yoga mats and yoga classes and all of those sorts of things. Just provide period products in your bathroom because you don't know whether one of your staff are unable to afford period products. It's a really easy fix. One of the other really interesting statistics that came out of the Bloody Big survey was that 55% of women have missed work due to their period. What I also found astounding was that 1 in 3 miss work because of a fear of leaking. Now that we can fix. That is providing period products in your bathroom. So whether that's heading down to Woolies and grabbing your period products, preferably in March and August, grab a 6 months worth, or head to our website where you can have period packs that provide period products for your staff. It's really important to make sure that we have menstrual equity in all workplaces. By the time we do the 2027 Bloody Big survey, I would be hoping that those problems have been eliminated. It will be odd that a workplace doesn't provide period products. That's our dream. So I bet you want to know how we got the responses. 153,000 responses for a survey is fabulous. I can tell you that trying to get people to complete a survey where they don't get anything, you're not going to win a car or do anything like that. What we were looking for was your views on menstruation. We did just about everything. We used social media, but in actual fact, in this survey, unlike the very first one, we contacted every council in Australia, every federal minister, every state minister, every sporting organisation, every school, all of the charities that we work with. We wanted to throw the net a little bit further than we had the first time. We wanted to make sure that the people who were answering were more the people that we were helping more than the people that were donating to our cause. I know it was extremely hard for us to try to gather the data from remote Indigenous communities. And before we do the next one, we'll try to work a little bit harder on how we could do that better. But we're really proud of the fact that 153,000 responses were gathered. This is the biggest body of data that the world has ever seen on menstruation, and we're really proud of that. The Bloody Big survey launched on the 1st of March, and we had International Women's Day coming up. So we knew that we would get a lot of attention and that we would try really hard to get as many responses, which I actually thought we'd get 100,000 responses around International Women's Day. Alas, that was not the case. We ended up with about 20,000 responses after a month in. And I remember coming back from the Easter holidays, we even offered for somebody to win a packet of Tim Tams every week for a whole year. And I thought that would go gangbusters, but clearly no one loves Tim Tams as much as I did. And it didn't go off as we thought. But I had this great idea that I would wear my pad dress, a dress that this amazing woman, Sandy, made for me for an event that I was going to that was all recycled dress with unusable pads that had been donated that were opened. And it was a fabulous ball gown dress, and I committed to wearing that dress every day for 30 days. I hustled like a pro. I did everything in that dress, from having Sunday afternoon naps to attending meetings to stand-up paddleboarding in that dress. So to say I gave it everything I had was an understatement, but to also say that my team, who followed me to speaking events, to everywhere in this pad dress, did an amazing job. They did. I don't know what we can pull out of the hat for the next one, but the hustle was real, and we did it because we need to make sure that no woman is ever having to use socks or wadded up toilet paper to deal with her period. Only 35% were well educated around periods. When I was in school, I was in a single parent household where my dad didn't talk about periods and wouldn't buy pads. The ladies in the office would help me with free ones when I needed them, after I was teased for getting my period at school on my dress and no pads. My male sports teacher called me disgusting and told me to clean myself up or don't come back to school. I was the subject of humiliation because of lack of affordability. I've heard thousands of stories about how girls got their period at school, and one, were not educated about it. And I remember being a 13-year-old girl who got my period and I thought I was dying. I never had any education around it. And I talked very openly about the fact that I was a bit of a class clown, and I just thought, oh, maybe I should have been listening to something and I missed it when I was talking. But that's not the case, because only 35% of those respondents said that they were well educated around menstruation and wished that they had more information. I'm shocked by that to start with. I'm shocked that these are the statistics in 2024. I can't imagine what those statistics would have been if we'd had asked that question 10 years ago. But I also know that I will ensure with everything in me that by the time we do the next survey, that this will not be the response rate. I have spoken to the Federal Minister for Education, and I truly believe that if we continue educating the way that we have, we will continue with the problem around the shame and stigma around menstruation. Because I know unless we educate, we will still not have the girl even being able to go to the office and ask the staff. In saying that, we want to make sure that period products are accessible in every bathroom, in every school, regardless of whether you're in primary school, because the survey shows us that girls as young as 8, 9 and 10 are getting their periods, yet education doesn't start until around they're 12. This is a big flaw in the education system, but also we're not educating boys. Without educating boys, those boys end up being somebody's father, boss, partner, friend, colleague, and they have no understanding around menstruation. If I can't get more women in Australia to answer the bloody big survey, I doubt I'm going to get men to respond as to whether they were well educated around menstruation. It's a goal of ours to ensure that we work with the federal government and state government bodies, but also with health industries. Somebody the other day said to me, oh, wouldn't it be fabulous if there were TV ads around menstruation as there are about bullying, as there are about other health issues? That would be a game changer. I think this statistic blows my mind. We have worked really hard to ensure that period products are available in all high schools around Australia, which they should be. But then we're sending our girls off to university, to TAFEs, to apprenticeships, and we're not providing them period products. 77% of TAFE and university students said that they couldn't afford period products. Imagine that. I experienced homelessness while doing unpaid nursing placements due to cost. Not only didn't the university care, but the hospital I was working at didn't have any available products. I found myself stealing gauze and using the hospital showers to wash out blood-stained underwear just to get by. With a skills shortage in Australia, I can't imagine why we wouldn't be providing period products to those at university and at TAFEs or any other education. Whether you're in primary school, high school, TAFEs, universities, apprenticeships, we should be making sure that access to period products is not a barrier to anyone getting an education. Now we know better, we need to do better. And I dead set will ensure that every university, every TAFE has access to period products before we do this next survey, and I hope to never read statements like that ever again. I had a meeting with the Federal Minister for Education, and he was exceptionally empathetic and really saddened by these results. And I really feel like with a good government in place, we can make these changes. Like, I really do. I don't think we'll be sitting here in 2027 having the conversation around this. I think the next body of data will show a significant decrease in people's inability to be able to get access to period products. Netball was a really big part of my life. I played netball twice a week. I trained twice a week. So netball was 4 days of my week. I suffered severely from endometriosis. So when I got my period, for me to be able to play sport, I had a tampon and a pad in. And when I would play on a Saturday, I knew that I had to go to the bathroom before I started netball. I had to run off at half time and change my tampon. And as soon as I'd finished the game, I'd also have to go back out. But I wasn't so worried after the game as I was during the game, because a fear of leaking was a major embarrassment for me, and it had happened so many times in my life. I'm blown away by the statistics through the Bloody Big survey that shows us that 68% of the respondents had missed sport due to their period, and that 77% said that it was a fear of leaking. Those stats are alarming, and when we're really looking at wanting more participation for girls in sport, we need to look at what can we do different. And I have been, I'd like to say on the blower, but that would show how old I am. I have been on Zoomy meetings with nearly everybody in sport. I don't believe that there should access to period products or the fear of leaking should be a barrier to anyone playing sport. So speaking to our sporting governing bodies like Football Australia, Netball Australia, tennis, we're looking at so many different things. How can we change the uniform? How can we get away from white? What can we do to make sure that players will play during their period and that they don't stop playing? Put period products in the training bags. Make sure you're having conversations. Educate yourself and the coaches on what does menstruation, what are the 4 cycles of menstruation, so that people can train in their superpower. Periods are not something that we're ever going to get away from, but how can we use it to benefit each child? And that's all about knowledge. It's about educating the coaches. It's about making sure that there's access to period products. And when I've spoken to some of the sporting organisations and the governing bodies, it's not just about access to period products. It's about where they're training. Is there a sanitary bin? Is there somewhere where they can go to the toilet? And to hear that in some of those places there's not sanitary bins and there's nowhere for them to provide them period products, we have to look at workarounds, which is why it's so important to work with the councils, because it's the council's responsibility to have the period products available and the sanitary bins available in those toilets. So again, I think that if we advocate hard and we all work together, I believe that when we come back to looking at this survey in 2027, that every sporting body will be looking at how do they ensure that there is menstrual equity in their sporting code, and how do we all work together to ensure that no girl misses out on playing something that they love playing. Because I tell you, I am the person that I am because I played netball and played in a team sport for as long as I did. So, you know, these statistics are alarming, but when we know better, we can do better. I believe every woman everywhere should have access to period products, which is why it's so important to us at Share the Dignity that our remote Indigenous sisters have access to period products. I want to share some of the alarming statistics that came through the Bloody Big survey. 83% of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander respondents have struggled to afford period products. To be honest, that hurts my heart. One of the stories that was sent in through the survey says, I grew up in the Torres Strait and had to tear up a towel to use as nothing was available. Stories like that are not acceptable. I remember when we installed a dignity vending machine in Katherine in the Northern Territory, and one of the women came up to me and said, thank you so much for putting the dignity vending machine here. I will tell you that our mob have been using mattress foam in their underwear to deal with their period. That says that only 17% of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander respondents can afford period products. That's not okay anywhere in the world, let alone here in the lucky country. People ask me what was one thing, if you had to pick one thing out of the bloody big survey that you found the most shocking, what was it? I'm going to tell you that more than 63% of the respondents said they had been diagnosed with low iron. What? 63% of Australian women are being diagnosed with low iron? Could you imagine those that are not diagnosed? This is a medical crisis for Australian women. Low iron causes so many issues. So for those following along at home, I have always had low iron due, I always thought, to having severe periods. I recently had a iron infusion. That was disturbing. My iron levels were so low, like many, that I was anemic. And the problems that it created for me, for my health, were extreme. Things like headaches, fatigue, muscle cramping. As soon as I'd had that iron infusion, within a week, I could see clearly. I'd stopped having cramps. My levels had increased and my brain fog had gone. Imagine 63% of women out there having those medical conditions, and we think that that's acceptable. I know that low iron is relative to most women. It's not a condition that most men suffer. But what I really want to see is that our health minister, both our federals and our state, really look at these statistics. This is the biggest body of data that has ever been collected on low iron in the last 10 years, and the closest amount of data that's ever been collected is about 10,000 people. So we really want to delve deeper. There are so many things to do and to action on the bloody big survey that low iron is one of those that I feel like is extremely concerning for Australian women, because I can tell you that I'm lucky enough to be able to afford iron tablets. But if people can't afford period products, do you really think that they're going to go off and buy iron tablets as well? I work on a paediatric ward with some children as young as 10 who have their period or are in hospital for a gynecological issue. Yet we have no access to period products. I have had to give a child gauze for her period. Embarrassing to say the least that a hospital couldn't provide basic necessities. That infuriates me. I will tell you that I started Pad Up Public Health after being in a hospital with my daughter who had a twisted ovarian cyst and was put in an incontinence pull-up, only to be told that they didn't have any pads in the hospital. It was then that I started to find out thousands of really alarming stories about no access to period products in a hospital. If you can get your head sutured, a CAT scan and morphine in hospital, why on earth could you not get a simple pad? We'll be advocating for this change. I will be speaking to the Federal Minister for Health and every state-based minister. This needs to stop. Access to period products should be available. Actually, I'm not even going to say access to period products, because I'm not asking each hospital to have, period undies and tampons. Just a basic pad should be available in every hospital, whether it's a private hospital or a public hospital, should you need one. It is a basic human right to have access to period products. And the fact that hospitals in Australia, it is not mandated, is simply embarrassing in Australia nowadays. 78% of people with a disability struggled to afford period products. I can't justify the cost of disposable period products, and due to my disability, I can't use a cup because I'm bedbound for the most part. I free bleed on towels. That's somebody's child. That's a human that can't afford period products. I can't imagine what that would feel like to free bleed on a towel because you can't afford period products. But this is 78% of people with a disability who can not afford period products. We need to be looking at, again, the health minister addressing some of these issues. These issues are not issues for a small charity like Share the Dignity. These are basic health issues that need to be addressed federally and state-based. I was 13 and just started my period. I was too embarrassed to tell my mum, and she did not ever talk about them to me. We didn't have much money, so I felt it was a burden. I used my lunch money to buy pads on my way to school and took the rubbish with me to put in the bins at school. When I had no lunch money, I had to use my bus money and walk for half an hour home just to be able to buy pads. I just couldn't even imagine the mental anguish that would do to that little girl, let alone just not having access to period products. When we think about menstrual inequalities, this is what that is all about. It is about not having access to period products, which is not great for your physical health, but things like that are not great for your mental health either. And I hope that these stories and these statistics start to change the narrative around menstruation in Australia and around the world. Mother wouldn't talk about it, so I couldn't ask her to buy anything. She refused to let me wear tampons as they might take my virginity or cause damage. Well, that comes from a lack of education, which is why it's so important that so many boys and girls are educated around menstruation. That whole sexuality and period products is something that has been passed on through generation and generation. It's also a cultural thing. But I believe that with good education, we can make sure that every person who wants to wear a tampon, who can continue playing sport, has the ability to do so. So clearly, from this podcast, you can see that I have a lot of work to do. Actually, we have a lot of work to do. I cannot do this alone, which is why I'm asking you to download the survey, to have a conversation around what you've heard today. And if you wanted to help more, here's a couple of things you could do. Meet with your local counsellor. Make sure that this bloody big survey comes across their desk, because by the time I get around the 546 councils in Australia, I want to ensure that there is menstrual equity in every council in Australia. What does that look like? Putting a vending machine in a library, making sure that education is at the forefront of every council's agenda. Let's make sure that we all work together towards ensuring that there is menstrual equity, so that by the time we bring about this bloody big survey next time, the results are a lot more positive, and you're not seeing me sitting here crying, telling you some of the stories that we're hearing and some of the stats that we've had to take in over the last month. I know that the next 12 months will see me working so hard to advocate for change. One of the first things that we're going to do is to ensure that every hospital in Australia provides period products. The second thing I'm going to do is to ensure that no matter what education status you are in, I will be ensuring that period products are readily available, and that the education that both boys and girls receive is adequate, and that the next time that we do this survey, we have a far more responses that say that they were adequately educated around menstruation. Third is to ensure that every workplace in Australia provides period products. And that's where you can help. We all work somewhere. That is where you can go to your boss, talk to your workplace, and provide period products in your bathroom. Whether that is heading down to Woolies, preferably in March and August, and getting your period products and popping them in your bathroom, or head to our website where we provide access to period products through our dispensers and our vending machines. It's as easy as that. They're the main goals that I need to see in the next 12 months to the next 3 years. And how can you play a role? I've already told you. Let's do this together. Let's ensure that the next time that we do this survey, that the results are much better.